Chapter 2. Investor Lesson Number 2. Pouring a Foundation of Wealth. Returning to the dingy gray officers' quarters on base that night was very difficult. They had been fine when I left earlier that day, but after spending the afternoon in Mike's new home, the officers' quarters seemed cheap, old, and tired. As expected, my 3 roommates were drinking beer and watching a baseball game on television. There were pizza boxes and beer cans everywhere. They did not say much as I passed through the shared living area. They just stared at the TV set. As I retired to my room and closed the door, I felt grateful that we all had private rooms. I had much to think about. At 25 years of age, I finally realized things that I could not understand as a kid of 9 years old, the age at which I first began working with Rich Dad. I realized that my rich dad had been working hard for years pouring a solid foundation of wealth. They had started on the poor side of town, living frugally, building businesses, buying real estate, and working on their plan. I now understood that Rich Dad's plan was to become very wealthy. While Mike and I were in high school, Rich Dad had made his move by expanding to different islands of the Hawaiian chain, buying businesses and real estate. While Mike and I were in college, he made his big move and became one of the major private investors in businesses in Honolulu and parts of Waikiki. While I was flying for the Marine Corps in Vietnam, his foundation of wealth was set in place. It was a strong and firm foundation. Now he and his family were enjoying the fruits of their labor. Instead of living in the poorest of neighborhoods on an outer island, they lived in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Honolulu. They did not just look rich on the surface as many of the people in that neighborhood did. I knew that Mike and his dad were rich because they allowed me to review their audited financial statements. Not many people were given that privilege. My real dad, on the other hand, had just lost his job. He had been climbing the ladder in the state government when he fell from grace from the political machine that ran the state of Hawaii. My dad lost everything he had worked to achieve when he ran against his boss for governor and lost. He had been blacklisted from state government and was trying to start over. He had no foundation of wealth. Although he was 52 and I was 25, we were in exactly the same financial position. We had no money. We both had a college education and we could both get another job, but when it came to real assets, we had nothing. That night, lying quietly on my bunk, I knew I had a rare opportunity to choose a direction for my life. I say rare because very few people have the luxury of comparing the life paths of 2 fathers and then choosing the path that was right for them. It was a choice I did not take lightly. Investments of the rich. Although many things ran through my mind that night, I was most intrigued by the idea that there were investments only for the rich, and then there were investments for everyone else. I remembered that when I was a kid working for Rich Dad, all he talked about was building his businesses. But now that he was rich, all he talked about was his investments for the rich. That day over lunch, he had explained, the only reason I built businesses was so I could invest in the investments of the rich. The only reason you build a business is so that your business can buy your assets. Without my businesses, I could not afford to invest in the investments of the rich. Rich Dad went on to stress the difference between an employee buying an investment and a business buying an investment. He said, most investments are too expensive when you purchase them as an employee. But they are much more affordable if my business buys them for me. I did not know what he meant by that statement, but I knew this distinction was important. I was now curious and anxious to find out what the difference was. Rich Dad had studied corporate and tax law and had found ways to make a lot of money using the laws to his advantage. I drifted off to sleep that night excited about calling Rich Dad in the morning. Different quadrants, different paths. When I was young, I did not know which dad to listen to when it came to the subject of money. Both were good, hard-working men. Both were strong and charismatic. Both said I should go to college and serve my country in the military. But they did not say the same things about money or give the same advice about what to become when I grew up. Now I could compare the results of the career paths chosen by my rich dad and my poor dad. My poor dad advised me, go to school, get good grades, and then find a safe, secure job with benefits. He was recommending a career path in this direction. Pause the video, prefer this image. On the other hand, my rich dad said, learn to build businesses and invest through your businesses. He was recommending a career path that looked like this. Pause the video, now prefer this image. There are core emotional differences and technical differences among the people found in each of the quadrants in the cash flow quadrant. These emotional and technical differences are important because they ultimately determine which quadrant a person tends to favor and operate from. For example, a person who needs job security will most likely seek the E quadrant. In the E quadrant are people in all walks of life, from janitors to presidents of companies. A person who needs to do things on his or her own is often found in the S quadrant, the quadrant of the self-employed or small business. I also say that S stands for specialists, solo, and smart because this is where many of the professionals such as doctors, attorneys, accountants, and other technical consultants are found. The cash flow quadrant book explains the differences between the S quadrant, which is where most small business owners operate, and the B quadrant, which is the quadrant where big businesses are found. In this book, we will go into much more detail about the technical differences, because it is here that the differences between the rich and everyone else are found. The lessons resume. I had spent many hours as a child sitting at a table in one of Rich Dad's restaurants as Rich Dad discussed the affairs of his business. At these discussions, I would sit and sip my soda while Rich Dad talked with his bankers, accountants, attorneys, stockbrokers, real estate brokers, financial planners, and insurance agents. It was the beginning of my business education. Between the ages of 9 and 18, I spent hours listening to these men and women solve intricate business problems. But those lessons around the table ended when I left for 4 years of college in New York, followed by 5 years of service with the Marine Corps. Now that my college education was complete and my military duty nearly over, I was ready to continue the lessons with Rich Dad. I called Rich Dad, ready to begin my lessons again. Rich Dad had turned the businesses over to Mike and was now semi-retired. He was looking for something to do rather than play golf all day. While Mike was busy running their empire, Rich Dad and I had lunch at a hotel on Waikiki Beach. The sun was warm, the ocean beautiful, the breeze light, and the setting as close to paradise as you can get. Rich Dad was shocked to see me walk in wearing my uniform. He had never seen me in uniform before. He had only seen me as a kid, dressed in casual clothes like shorts, jeans, and t-shirts. I guess he finally realized that I had grown up since leaving high school, and had seen a lot of the world and fought in a war. I wore my uniform to the meeting because I was between flights and had to get back to the base to fly that evening. So that is what you have been doing since leaving high school, said Rich Dad. I nodded my head and said, 4 years at the military academy in New York, and 4 years in the Marine Corps. 1 more year to go. I am very proud of you, said Rich Dad. Thanks, I replied. But it will be nice to get out of a military uniform. It's really tough being spit on or stared at, or called baby killers by all these hippies and people who are against the war. I just hope it ends soon for all of us. I'm glad Mike did not have to go, said Rich Dad. He wanted to enlist, but his poor health kept him out. He was fortunate, I replied. I lost enough friends to that war. I would have hated to have lost Mike too. Rich Dad nodded his head and asked, so what are your plans once your military contract is up next year? Well, 3 of my friends have been offered jobs with the airlines as pilots. It's tough getting hired right now, but they say they can get me in through some contacts they have. So you're thinking of flying with the airlines? Asked Rich Dad. I nodded slowly. Well, that's all I've been doing, thinking about it. The pay is okay, and benefits are good. And besides, my flight training has been pretty intense, I said. I've become a pretty good pilot after flying in combat. If I fly for a year with a small airline and get some multi-engine time, I will be ready for the major carriers. So is that what you think you are going to do? Asked Rich Dad. No, I replied. Not after what has happened to my dad and after having lunch with you two yesterday at Mike's house. I lay awake for hours last night, and I thought about what you said about investing. I realized that if I took a job with the airlines, I might someday become an accredited investor. But I realized that I might never go beyond that level. Rich Dad sat in silence, nodding ever so slightly. So what I said hit home, he said in a low voice. Very much so, I replied. I reflected on all the lessons you gave me as a kid. Now I am an adult and the lessons have a new meaning to me. And what did you remember? Asked Rich Dad. I remember you're taking away my 10 cents per hour and making me work for free, I replied. I remember that lesson of not becoming addicted to a paycheck. Rich Dad laughed at himself and said, that was a pretty tough lesson. Yes it was, I replied, but a great lesson. My dad was really angry with you then. But now he is the one trying to live without a paycheck at 52 years old. I was only 9 when I got that lesson. After lunch at Mike's yesterday, I vowed that I would not spend my life clinging to job security just because I need a paycheck. That is why I doubt that I will seek a job with the airlines. And that is why I'm here having lunch with you. I want to review your lessons on how to have money work for me, so I don't have to spend my life working for money. But this time, I want your lessons as an adult. Make the lessons harder and give me more detail. And what was my first lesson? Asked Rich Dad. The rich don't work for money, I said promptly. They know how to have money work for them. A broad smile came over Rich Dad's face. He knew that I had been listening to him all those years as a kid. Very good, he said. And that is the basis of becoming an investor. All investors learn how to have their money work hard for them. And that is what I want to learn, I said quietly. I want to learn and maybe teach my dad what you know. He is in a very bad way right now, trying to start over again at the age of 52. I know, said Rich Dad. I know. So on a sunny day, with surfers riding the beautiful waves of the deep blue ocean, my lessons on investing began. The lessons came in 5 phases, each phase taking me to a higher level of understanding Rich Dad's thought process and his investment plan. The lessons began with preparing mentally and taking control of myself because that is the only place that investing really takes place anyway. Investing ultimately begins and ends with taking control of yourself. The lessons on investment in phase 1 of Rich Dad's investment plan are all about the mental preparation it takes before actually beginning to invest. Lying in my bunk that night in 1973 in a dingy room on the Marine Corps base, my mental preparation had begun. Mike was fortunate enough to have a father who had accumulated great wealth. I was not that fortunate. In many ways, he had a 50-year head start on me. I had yet to start. That night, I began my mental preparation by choosing between seeking job security, the road my poor dad chose, and pouring a foundation of real wealth, the road my rich dad chose. That is where the process of investing truly begins and where Rich Dad's lessons on investing start. It starts with a very personal decision, a mental choice to be rich, poor, or middle class. It is an important decision because, whichever financial position in life you choose, be it rich, poor, or middle class, everything in your life then changes. For Rich Dad Poor Dad audiobook, click on top right corner. Thank you for giving your valuable time for this video. We hope you learned something new today. Stay tuned for our next videos. Hey, don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video to your friends. And turn on bell notification for our updates.